All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Costanza. I am excited to be your host today. I'm a vice president with Springer Publishing, and we're thrilled to bring to you our webinar titled Student Loan Best Practices, What Everyone with Student Loan Debt Should Know. We're not surprised by the popularity of this webinar topic. We've got a significant number of participants with us today. And we wanted to say thank you so much to each of you for joining us. We expect the webinar to last about 25 minutes, and then we'll set aside some time for questions. So probably be about 40 minutes total. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be available in about 5 to 7 days following this webinar. So let me get started with an introduction. It's my pleasure to provide an introduction to Mr. Kellen Williams. Kellen is a senior manager with Laurel Road, and he specializes in providing solutions which help to reduce the growing burden of student loans by educating individuals regarding the optimal repayment options that meet the specific needs of each individual. And Laurel Road offers a suite of student loan products that I'm sure you'll find very compelling, given the potential to reduce the costs of your student loans. So stay tuned for that valuable information. And hello, Kellen, how are you today?
I'm well. Thank you so much, Frank. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk with so many of your readers.
Excellent. Well, welcome. And with that, let me pass it over to you, Kellen.
Thank you so much. So hello, everybody. My name is Kellen Williams from Laurel Road. Really excited to spend some time with you today. Just so that everybody's on the same page and we know what to anticipate, I wanted to share with you the agenda and what we're going to speak about. So, first thing, and everybody knows all about this, for the past 20 months, we've all been wrapped up in COVID-19. So it's definitely had an impact on the student loan world. And I would like to give you an update on what that means for you, particularly over the next couple of months. There are going to be some changes on the way that you need to know. And then I'm going to talk about student loans refinancing, as well as, so basically student loan repayment options. And there are two different ways that you can do so. So one way is through your federal loan, and I'll talk to you about all the ways that you can do that. And for some of you on the line, that might be the best way to approach repaying those loans that you've accumulated over the years. And then the other option, should you choose, might be going with a private lender. So we'll talk about private repayment options. And full transparency, Laurel Road is a member of KeyBank. We are one of those private, institutions that can be a lender for yourself. And I'm going to talk to you not just about, the general aspect of private lending, but also the benefits that we can provide from Laurel Road. So once again, if you have any questions as you listen on, please keep track of them, and then we will address them as you share them in the chat box. So first thing, I talked about COVID-19. We've all been in this for the past 20 months. Just something I wanted you to know, there have been multiple times that they've pushed back the payment holiday. So right now, and it started back in March of 2020, through the CARES Act, they put a pause to having to pay on student loans. They know the financial hardships that some people face as a result of loss of job, opportunity, other aspects as well. And it's been really, gracious, really, really awesome that the government has done that. The first time that they pushed it back was in September of 2020. They said that it was going to end in January of 2021. And then there was an update at about November of that year saying that they were going to push it back until September of 2021. And then, as you can see here, on August 8th, an executive order was passed that said that the last and final time that they're going to push it back is now going to be January 31st of 2022. So in a few short months, right, we all have to be prepared for knowing the best strategies towards paying back those student loans. And that's what this webinar is going to be all about. Just want to make sure everybody knows who this impacts. So anybody that has a direct or FFEL program student loan, any of the Perkins loans that are held by the Department of Education, any of those types of loans are going to be impacted by the fact that you no longer have to pay them. One thing to know, and I'm going to get into this, But some of you on the line, knowing that, you're nurses and you might be employed or looking to be employed by a nonprofit organization, a hospital, 501c3, you will be eligible for a public service loan forgiveness. I'll talk to you about what that looks like. But the main thing is that during this entire time, the cool thing is that there's no interest on the loans that you have not been paying over the past 20 months. And that's one of the main benefits that the government has provided to everybody. So, like I said, we're going to talk about the federal repayment options. We'll talk about consolidation, public service loan forgiveness. Really key aspect of the public service loan forgiveness program is that you have to be enrolled in an income-driven repayment program. I'll talk about what that looks like. A lot of people overlook that part. And then talk about the federal versus refinancing differences. So with consolidation, just like the word means, consolidate means to bring numerous things together into one. That's an aspect and something that you can do for an approach to taking care of your federal loans. You can do that with your private loans as well, but with your federal loans, you can choose to consolidate. There are benefits to doing that if you so choose. One thing is that with a federal loan, most federal loans are going to be in excess of about 6.5%, right? That's usually about the floor. Some of those loans are going to be higher than 8-9%. Hopefully you don't have one of those loans. Those are really high rates. But because there are different terms and different rates that you can have, you can decide to consolidate them. And that might be a good thing, because if you consolidate them, then it's going to be a weighted average of all the loans that you're consolidating for one new rate for one new loan that you have. Those repayment terms could be anywhere from 10 to 30 years. Depending on the payment terms is most likely, as you can anticipate, a sliding scale relative to the rate that you're going to have. But ultimately, it's going to be a weighted average of what those interest rates are for those loans. If you have any additional questions about what this looks like, I always, tell people to go to studentaid.gov/repay to look at all of these details. And this is particularly important based on all of the changes that they've had over the last 20 months relative to, the CARES Act ruling. So with the payment holiday. Now, public service loan forgiveness. I know a lot of people probably have a lot of questions about this, and I would like to definitely give you the answers here. So basically, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, or PSLF for short, allows borrowers and nonprofit organizations to essentially get their loans forgiven as long as they meet the following requirements. This is really important. Well, A, you need to have a federal loan, right? A direct loan from the government. You need to be enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan. That's a key thing that a lot of people overlook. And on the next slide, I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But the other two things, and this is the easier part, is that, well, you have to be employed by a 501c3, right? Essentially a hospital, nonprofit, government entity. That's the easy part. People usually check that box. And the next part is that you have to make 120 monthly payments. It says on time. That's actually not exactly true. You can be late, but you should never want to be late. Anything that you're late on is then going to be, carry interest. There are going to be different things that are going to ding you relative to not paying off on time. So just know that if you have 120 payments, and notice that it's not saying consecutive, right? But if you want to meet the 10-year requirement, that would be 120 consecutive months. As long as you you satisfy all of these requirements, then you would be eligible for loan forgiveness. That does not mean that you will get that loan forgiven, but you are eligible for making it to the end of that rainbow, so to speak. And the pot at the end is to be forgiven. Once again, and this is really important, if you have any questions about this, you can go to studentaid.gov/public service, and it'll definitely give you updated information about this. Now, I wanted to talk to you about some of the repayment, income-driven repayment programs that you need to, I repeat, you need to be in order to fully qualify for that PSLF program. And I'm emphasizing that because that's something that a lot of people overlook, unfortunately. They say, I work for a 501c3 and, a hospital, government entity, nonprofit. I've made all of my payments. I'm on time. I should be forgiven. Unfortunately, there's so many stories of people that go through 7-8 years and they realize that, oh man, I've been paying this, but I'm not officially in one of these programs, so I'm not going to get credit. There's actually been some articles written, and this is just an aside, but if you did a little bit of research, you'll see that there have been a lot of complaints about this. And there have been some articles written that show that there have been some instances when the government has said, okay, even though you have not been in the program, we will still, grant you time served, essentially, you could think of it that way, going towards this program. I wouldn't count on that. It's not a blanket evaluation for everybody if you choose to forget. So don't forget, you're hearing it here first, perhaps, and hopefully you'll never forget. You need to be in one of these programs. Now, what are these programs? Essentially, they're called Repay, another one's called Pay, another one called IBR. Rather than get into the slight differences between each one of these, just know that what they're telling you is that once you're in the program, they're going to require you to pay at least 10% of your income in order to qualify. Now, if you are making $200,000 a year, that means that they're expecting you to pay $20,000 that year for your loans. This part, I always suggest that you consult a tax professional. And the reason why I say consult a tax professional is because it's of you, the 10% or 15%, right? So the minimum, I'm giving you the minimum of 10%. It could be up to 15%, as you can see in the IBR repayment program at the bottom there. But it's going to be not just how much you make, but it's how much you and your spouse makes if you file your taxes jointly. That's a key, right? So if you made $200,000 a year and they're expecting you to pay $20,000 per year, and it's 10 years, that's $200,000. If you have $250,000 worth of loans and your income never increases over those 10 years, at the end, right, theoretically speaking, you will have $50,000 left, and that would be the amount that they would forgive. Once they forgive, this is another key, but they actually tax you on that as earned income that year, and they expect a lump sum payment on the taxes of whatever is remaining that they're going to forgive. And that's another key. Once again, suggest consulting a tax professional when it comes to this. But if you're married, and most people who are married, they file jointly, there are benefits to doing that. I would say that for this program, it's not a benefit. If you make $200,000 and your spouse makes $100,000, now you're expected to pay $30,000 at the end of those 10 years, using that example of having loans of $250,000. Well, at the end of 10 years, you would have paid theoretically $300,000. Well, $300,000 is higher than $250,000, which means that you would have already satisfied the requirements, but also paid off all of your loans prior to making it to the end of that rainbow. So you would have no loans to forgive as a result of being in one of these programs and being in the PSLF program. So there are a lot of things to consider. I think it's a great program. I think it works for some. It doesn't work for all. The reason, and that's a key part of that, less than 10% of all people that are enrolled in this program actually make it to the end, and then a smaller percentage are actually have loans forgiven. Once again, if you were to do some Googling and you would read some of the articles, there have been a lot of people complaining about this, and the government has said that they're going to make some changes or award people some opportunities. Once again, I wouldn't hold your breath, but you may be the perfect candidate for this program, and I suggest you to look into it. You might have been hearing it here first. Hopefully this is not the last, and I suggest that you look into it. I know I spent a lot of time on that slide, but I think it's really important, particularly knowing that there are not a lot of nurses on the line and you might be thinking about entering into this program. I want to make sure you guys are fully informed so that you make the best decision for yourself and can fully take advantage. Now, with these programs, the Repay, the Pay, and the IBR, essentially, I want you to know that between a federal loan and a private lender, right, there are some differences. Right? You have to make the decision, right? The name of this webinar is Student Loan Best Practices. This is not, how to pay your student loans through a federal program or how to pay your loans through a private lender. It's giving you the full landscape so that you can make the best decision for yourself. Now, relative to the repayment terms and the differences, well, if you have a federal loan, and we talked about this on one of the first slides when we talked about consolidation, your loans are going to be anywhere from 10 to 30 years relative to that term. With a private lender, specifically with Laurel Road, if you choose to refinance your loan, you can refinance that in terms of 5 years all the way up to 20 years, right? Depending on how short your term is going to have an impact on the rate that you receive. And another thing that's really important to know is the interest rate. When you have a federal loan, it's a standardized interest rate. Depending on the type of loan, the federal loan that you receive, you already know what your rate's going to be. It's going to be 6.5, it's going to be 7.0, it's going to be, 7.5, 8, you know exactly what it is. When it's a private lender, that is not the case. Specific to Laurel Road, your interest rate is going to be a reflection of your credit worthiness. Okay, so there's a number of different factors that go into that to determine what your credit worthiness, but just know, and I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself relative to speaking about the private lenders, but just know for Laurel Road, by way of what's available in the marketplace, we have the lowest rates available for our members, specifically those that are within healthcare. We specialize in healthcare. We're the only ones that specialize in healthcare. That's part of the reason that we are partners with Springer Publishing, specific to the daily nurse and the minority nurse readers, because of our expertise, and we're here to help you. As you can see on this slide, and I'll just go through the rest of this pretty quickly, for a federal loan, you have to be in an income-driven repayment plan. Clearly, with a private lender, you don't need that. If you want to be eligible for the PSLF, you need to have a federal loan. This is really important. If you choose to refinance any of your federal loans, whichever federal loan you refinance is no longer eligible for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. You can have multiple loans. You can have 4 different loans out. 2 of those loans might equal 150,000 and the other 2 loans may equal 150,000. You may choose to not refinance all 4 of them. You may choose to keep 2 of them as a federal loan and then refinance 2 of them. Those that are refinanced are not eligible. Those that are not refinanced are eligible. So just know that. The length of forbearance, and this is also, yes.
Could I just jump in and ask a quick question? One of our participants says, I also have a private student loan. The challenge I've encountered when trying to look at IBR is that they will not take into account that I'm also making a payment on my private loans. And they act like this is additional income that they have. Any suggestions you may have about how to approach this?
That's a really good question. And so, yeah, the frustration is that they don't care that you have a private loan out there. The only thing they care about is the amount that you owe the government by way of that federal loan. And that federal loan amount that you owe is going to be the only thing that they look at, coupled with your salary, how much money you make or you and your spouse make within that IBR program. In that case, with IBR, it could be as much as 15%. So you'll be on the hook for even more than the 10%. That's the only thing that matters. So, that's the interesting part, right? So, I would assume that this person chose to refinance their federal loan with a private lender because they were able to get a much lower interest rate. So that's the good thing to do. Unfortunately, even though that's a good thing to do for those loans, if you didn't do all of your loans to refinance, whatever you have left over with the federal government, they're still going to look at it as this is the only thing they care about. They don't care anything else that's going on. It's equivalent to saying this: hey, I have $300,000 worth of federal loans and I'm in the IBR program, but they don't care that I have a mortgage that I have to pay $3,000 a month on. The same way they don't care about that is the same way that they don't care about what you're doing on the private lending side. Now, they anticipate you and expect you to take care of the full financial your full financial wellness picture, right? What you're responsible for. So, that car payment, that mortgage, that private lending, that you have to pay that, they don't care about any of that. They just look, how much money do you make? How much do you and your spouse make? If that's just the way you choose to do it. How much is your loan? Okay, this is how much you need to pay me. Does that make sense? Hopefully so. But that's a good question. And Frank, thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then the last part, just quickly, forbearance. So previous to the CARES Act and the student payment holiday that they've had over the last 20 months, this would have been a bigger difference. But because essentially everybody has been in this boat with a federal, loan, you can essentially, the length of forbearance is pretty long. It's up to 3 years. That's pretty long. For a private lender, usually it's not going to be more than 12 months. That's what it is for Laurel Road. That's what it is for most people. It says here, not consecutive 3-month time periods. That's actually not correct, because as a result of the current climate that we're in, if you request to have a full year in a row, then we will provide that to you. But the reason why this slide is what it is in a couple of months, the climate is going to change. So I want it to be as accurate as possible on what it looks like going forward. So that's that. And then in-school deferment, it depends on how you determine what, a half-time student looks like, but you can be eligible. And once again, for us, that forbearance can be, up to a year. So I'll go to the next slide, and I'll just go quickly now because I spent a lot of time on those last couple of slides. Just the default timeline, 270 days for federal. It's actually, if you're late at all for any payment, technically speaking, the legal term, you're actually in default there. But more times than not, if anybody's ever paid a bill that's late, you won't be put in default, right, until you reach usually 60 or 90 days. Most businesses, it's 60 or 90. Federal government is just a little bit longer when it comes to 270. I just mentioned this only because this really has an impact. It can impact your credit score more so than anything else. And then relative to the grace period, the 6-month grace period really has to do with when you graduate. So from the time you graduate, you then have 6 months that you don't have to pay. And then at the end of those 6 months, that's when it turns on the faucet where you have to start paying your loans. If you choose to, right from the start, refinance your private loans with a private lender, then actually there would be no grace period with that private lender. You would just start paying right away. But there are benefits that you may have already calculated into why that grace period doesn't mean as much for you, because here's a key part of this grace period. It's not the case now, but it will be the case on February 1st of 2022. Anytime you have any grace periods, the interest does not turn off. So you don't have to pay, but the interest continues. So the amount that you had to pay 6 months before will then be 6 months later, will be more because interest has been accruing. So just want you to know that's really, really important on that part. And that's really the important part on this slide. Once again, studentaid.gov/ if you look at the bottom there, manage-loans, that just studentaid.gov site period is really, really great resource to provide you with a lot of information. I'm going to start talking about private lending next, and specifically Laurel Road. If you have any interest on learning more about Laurel Road, you can go to laurelroad.com/refinance-student-loans. But specific to the readers here, there's actually a benefit that we're providing to you as a result of being a reader with minority nurses and daily nurses. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that. So student loan refinancing with a private lender, there are 4 different aspects I'll talk about: student loan refinancing, refinancing with us, Laurel Road, the resident and fellows program that probably may not really align with many people that are listening right now, but I'll still mention it. And then the interest rate environment, what that looks like, and why now might be a perfect time to consider refinancing. So really quickly, what's the point of refinancing, right? What are the benefits? What are you looking to do? Well, you're looking to save money over the life of your loan. You want to lower your interest rate, and then you want to pay off your student loans more quickly. If you do all of those things, that's going to lower your monthly payment, and then it's going to reduce the number of loans you have in repayment. All of those things together is going to help you to save thousands of dollars over the life of your loan, right? Once again, what's the point of refinancing? You want to save money. Everybody knows that. But in order to save money, you first need to lower that interest rate. You're going to be able to do that significantly with Laurel Road, right? Once you satisfy both of those requirements, well, then, because you have less money that you have to pay as a result of that lower interest rate, you have less money you have to pay per month. And that's also key. And another thing is that you pay off those loans more quickly. The reason why you're paying off those loans more quickly, just to keep it as elementary as possible, is that you're essentially paying less interest, right? The more interest you pay, the longer it is to pay off that loan, because the way that loans are, the repayment of loans are situated is that you're paying off more interest than principal earlier in the loan, and then later on you're paying more principal than interest. So they're knocking off interest that's not taking away the principal early. And that's why all this money you're paying doesn't really help as much. And you can get caught in a trap. And that's whether it be a private lender or a federal lender. It doesn't matter. You get caught in a trap in this kind of, you're on this like this rat race. You keep talking and talking, you keep paying and paying and paying, and like nothing's changing, nothing's happening. It's because of the interest, right? So I just want you to know that. And then with us, like I was talking about, what are the benefits of, being a minority nurse or daily nurse reader? Well, with us, you're going to get a quarter of a point rate discount. This is something that we don't offer to everybody. And we offer to some of our partners. This is the highest rate discount that you would receive from us as a result of being a partner of Springer Publishing. We are more than happy to provide this to you. And I just want to give you some context on what that means, because if I was a listener right now and somebody told me that I'm going to get a quarter of a point rate discount, it may mean absolutely nothing to me. It's no different than me telling you that I'm going to give you $1 off the price of that car. Right? If you don't know that, cars cost thousands upon thousands of dollars, you might not have a frame of reference on how much impact that dollar may make. That example that I just provided is very purposeful, because $1 doesn't mean anything. A quarter of a point means a lot, and I'll tell you why. To give you some, I'll do it based on numbers. So for a person who has a loan in excess of $120,000, paid over 10 years, and the difference in the loan that you're paying, the interest rate, is a 2% difference. Now, I'm going to talk to you why I'm saying 2%. The reason why I'm mentioning 2% is that most federal loans are going to be, like I said, it can be as low as 6.5, but most of them are going to be about 7 or above. So let's just say 7. And then with Laurel Road, told you, we have the lowest rates in the marketplace. It's part of the reason, among other things, also with our expertise in the healthcare space, as to why we're partners with Springer Publishing, and we're here to help you. But the rates that we offer, it is a matter of your credit worthiness, right? The rate that you receive. But on average, the loans that you get from us are going to be under 4%, right? Then I'm giving you the average. So let me go a little bit higher, right? The worst loan that you'll get from us is usually right around 5, right? So if you have the worst from us, which is 5%, and you have the best from the federal government, that's right around 7, that's where that 2% difference comes in. So I just want to tell you where that comes from. Now, $120,000 loan that you have paid over 10 years, and the 2% difference equals in excess of $25,000 saved over the life of that loan, paid over 10 years, right? That's significant, right? That's significant. Now, that's 2%. If you take a quarter of a point, you can imagine the impact that it's going to have for you. And this is just given to you as a result of being a reader, and we're happy to do so. So I just want to give you that frame of context. Another thing, a lot of times when you go to apply for so many things, and I don't know if you're like myself, but I hate filling out applications, particularly if it requires me to, write it out, pen the paper, like going to the doctor's office or the dentist's office, fill this out. And oh man, so annoying. Well, we understand that. So we have our application. It's fully online. It honestly takes 5 minutes or less to apply. It's really easy, really simple, streamlined process. And then, like I said, just because you're a reader, we will give you that quarter of a point off. There are other ways that you can receive discounts from us, and I'll talk to you quickly about some of those, but for the most part, just know that you're going to get the lowest rates from Laurel Road should you choose to refinance with us, with a private lender, and you're going to save thousands of dollars in doing so. This slide here just lets you know why now is a great time to refinance just overall, because the interest rates are so low. That's why there's been, just to give you some frame of reference, that's why there's been such a mad dash, a big push in the housing market over the past year and a half plus, because the interest rates are so low. With the interest rates so low, people want to take advantage of that, right? And people are doing this, talking about the significance of interest rates. If you have a mortgage and your mortgage you got at 4.5%, and now you can get it for 3%, people are jumping at that chance, right? Once again, letting you know the significance of a quarter of a point, a full point, 2 points, right? When it comes to how much you're paying over the life of that loan. And I'm talking about, mortgages, but those are the two largest purchases that most people are going to make in their lives: their education and their homes. And that's why these percentages and these interest rates are so significant. I'm just looking at the time. I know we're at about 30 minutes, and I think that there's some questions that are coming up, but this is the last slide. It's just basically a summation of the last things that I was talking about, just saying that you want to be strategic about your student loan payments. What I mean by strategic is thinking about, well, how many loans do I have out? How many loans do I need to pay? How much do I have to pay for each one of those loans? And what's the interest rate tied to each one of those loans? And then you can make a determination. Do I want to consolidate? Right? We talked about that first. Do I want to, refinance just the loans that have the highest rates and keep the loans that are lower? Don't refinance those. Do I want to refinance all of them? Right? Do I want to, if I'm eligible, to enter into this PSLF program? If so, you need to make sure that you're in one of the income-driven repayment plans, the repay, the pay, or the IBR, in order for you to be fully eligible and get the loan forgiveness at the end of that rainbow, at the end of those 120 payments or 10 years. What's the significance of that quarter of a point? Does that mean a lot to me, right? And that's on top of whatever your rate's going to be based on your credit worthiness that we will, assess through a soft credit pull, right? We're not even going to impact your credit if you would like to try to explore what your rate would be with Laurel Road. Then, hey, do I want to take advantage of the tax implications, right? So I can actually, deduct up to $2,500 on my federal taxes every single year, right? That's an advantage that you have when paying that back. And then at the end of the day, what's the best way to be eligible and increase the amount of savings that you have when it comes to any of your loans? And that's keeping your credit in good shape. Pay on time, pay more than what you need to pay, and pay in totality. And your consistency will be really, really key, along with, obviously you being a person that has a good job, you're making good money, depending on, how many loans do you have out, right? You don't want to have a bunch of loans out, because they're going to examine that and figure out, well, how risky of a borrower are you at the end of the day? So hopefully that gives you a good synopsis, but I'm more so excited to answer some of these questions that I think might be out here. So Frank, do we have any good questions that I can answer?
Yeah, there are some great questions. Thank you, Kellen, for such an excellent presentation. So here are some of the questions, really interesting. So when you refinance, is the rate fixed once you refinance?
So that's a good question. Now, you can choose to refinance and pursue a fixed rate, or you can pursue a variable rate. But if you choose the fixed rate, know that it is fixed for that refinance exploration, right, that you're doing, but you can always refinance again. So remember I said that the last, year and a half has been an excellent time to take advantage of, the low interest rate climate. We've had some people that refinanced at the beginning of 2020 within that first quarter, as soon as this happened. And then we've had people that then a year later, like this spring, summer, refinanced again. So then they got their loan to be from, let's say, 6.5% down to 4.5%. And then they got the 4.5% down to, under 4%. I mean, the amount of money that they're saving is very significant. So that's a good question.
Yeah, that's great. And then just to remind everyone, when will the CARES Act interest and payment holiday end?
Right. No, good question. So everybody, January 31st, 2022 is the last day that you do not need to pay the government.
Good to know.
February 1st, they're going to say, can I have my money? Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just to reiterate, can you pick and choose which loans to refinance?
You can. Yes, you can. I by no means am I a financial expert whiz, not giving, fiduciary responsibility and the advice, not giving advice. I would just say, though, if it were me, I would always try to knock down any loans that I have that have the highest interest rates, because the higher the rate, the interest I'm paying, the more interest I'm paying, the less I'm impacting the principal, which means I'm paying longer on that loan. And the idea is to try to decrease the amount of time that you're paying on that loan to get it out as quickly as possible. So.
Yep. And then here's another question about timing. When is the best time to refinance?
Best time to refinance. Actually, there's not one specific answer. I think that everybody's individual situation is different. I think the best time to refinance is when your financial house is in order. When your financial house is in order, and included, when I say in order, that also includes, like, what is your credit, right? If you have good credit, then it's a great time to refinance. If you don't have a great credit, then it's probably not the ideal time to refinance. But if you have, okay credit and you refinance, but now you're paying on time for the next couple of years, then you want to refinance again, because now your credit score is going to increase because you have a massive amount of debt, right? Hundreds of thousands potentially, and you're showing that you're paying on time with this massive amount and you're paying on time. People like to see that. So that means that your credit score is going to improve. And when your credit score improves, when you go to refinance again, then you're going to get credit for that, and you're going to get a better rate that's going to be awarded to you. And that's just for anybody, any loan situation, car, mortgage, student loans, you name it. So that would be my suggestion to you. Just make sure you have enough money in the bank. Make sure you have a good job, you have money coming in, and your debt to income ratio is good. And I think that you should then refinance for sure.
Yeah, that's great advice. And this last question has probably been on the minds of a lot of individuals. So this individual is asking, do you think the government will forgive our outstanding student loans? Great question.
Can you repeat it? I heard the last part I missed.
Yeah, do you think the government will forgive people's outstanding student loans?
Yeah, no, that's so funny. I get that question so often. So the answer is, do I think? I think the answer is no. But do I think that there might be a small portion that they may forgive? The answer could potentially be yes. Now, what I mean by this is, there have been, first of all, it's a public relations game that they're playing, and you really see this according to the political cycles, right? When people are going to try to get into office, that's when you see people trying to essentially pander to their base to say what they want to hear in order to get the votes that they eventually would like to secure. And I think it's unfortunate because, we're the ones that suffer at the end of the day. But they've talked about potentially forgiving some people, not all, and it'll be a very select subset of individuals, up to $25,000. I've heard 50. I think it's very unlikely that we'll get to 50. There may be some people that will get up to $25,000 forgiven. But I would not hold my breath. I also, if you're getting it forgiven, it's only forgiven for federal loans. It's once again not forgiven for private lenders. So it's another way to play a little game, right? So you might be waiting and say, oh, they may forgive this, let me not refinance, right? But for every month, every half a year, every year that you don't refinance, that's less money that you're saving, because you may be able to take that interest rate from 6.5 down to 4, right? That's a significant amount of savings. And the amount of savings that you may have when you refinance might actually end up being equal to, but usually more than how much you would have been forgiven at the end of that PSLF program. Or in this case, how much the federal government may waive. But I wouldn't wait. If you're, to answer your earlier question, like if your financial house is in order and you're in a good spot, refinance, and then when later on, a couple years pass, refinance again. So.
Mhm. Well, thank you, Kellen. You've given everybody a lot to think about, and thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Great to get together with you again today. Thank you to this wonderful audience. We're always here to help. On the screen, you can see the contact information for Laurel Road and the phone number. And Kellen, again, thank you so much. It's always great to get together with you. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much, Frank. And everybody who's listening, thank you so much. If you have any questions, definitely utilize that email address that you see on the screen. Call. We have a premium care team that's open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day of the week, even on Sundays. So if you have any issues whatsoever, you can always give them a call. We're here to help. But we want to make sure that people are in the best position possible to take care of their debt and get their financial houses in order. So thank you so much for the opportunity and the time.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kellen. Thank you to this audience. And everyone, will see you at our next webinar. So have a wonderful day, and goodbye for now.